many dances have ended when the band runs out of tunes. Too many hearts have been broken when the pieces come unglued. Too many dreams have ended when the new moon's lost its shine. Oh, send me the love of a lifetime. I've hid my dreams in a safe disguise. I gave up my wings in the stormy skies, but the bird in the golden cage still wants to fly. Too many secrets we're keeping, let's leave them all behind. Too many words left unspoken, and we're running out of time. If there's a chance for tomorrow, then put your hand in mine. Oh, send me the love of a lifetime. Oh.
You just have to get one person. You just have to get a Marilyn Monroe who could pull this off and could really make it work. And she'd have to be absolutely believable.
Marilyn Monroe.
And then don't put anybody else in the show. Just have it be Marilyn and let her tell her story in her own words and in her own music.
I wanna be loved by you, and nobody else but you. I wanna be loved by you alone. Oh, I practiced jiggling my backside for a week. Boop, boop, be doo. Groucho loved it. His eyes popped out. I remember, he made this joke off screen. He said, "Young lady, you're a case of arrested development. With your development, somebody's bound to get arrested."
So this was a crazy idea, trying to find a 36-year-old Marilyn Monroe, someone who could play Marilyn, who could act like Marilyn, sing like Marilyn, dance like Marilyn, and who would tell Marilyn's story in her own words on the very last day of Marilyn's life. The entire success of this play would depend on finding that one special actress, and if we didn't find her, it would be all over before we even got started. When I was 10, my father was stationed overseas in Kwajalein in the Marshall Islands, and he ran the officers club. It was a very sweet gig. I was sitting there in the pool hall one day, and I looked over and I saw this magazine, Life magazine, laying there, and there was this woman on the cover, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. And I think maybe that was my first time I really looked at a girl and went, wow. And I think maybe I went through puberty like that afternoon. I looked at this picture, I kept looking at it, and finally I just ripped the cover off the top and folded it up and put it in my pocket, and I slipped the magazine under the stack. And that was kind of my first affair with Marilyn Monroe, till my mother washed my pants. But then when I returned to the States in 1954, she was a huge star. I always had this affinity for Marilyn, and I was discovering that the more I worked on this script, the more personal it all became.
Studios, yeah. Marilyn did this. They treat you like a machine, like a money machine. I did what they said, all I got, with a lot of abuse. Oh no, they're all just laughing at me. I hate it. Big breasts, big ass. Yeah, big deal. Can't I be anything else?
I wanted it to be something that was meaningful and not be just a bit of fluff.
How long can you be sexy? When my face goes and my body goes, I'll be nothing. Nothing.
Years went by, and I got really busy in the 90s. I had shows running all over the world. We were in Germany, we were in China, we were in Japan, we were all over the United States and Canada, and we had 12 to 15 shows going out every year, and it was crazy. And so we were making a lot of money, and I just didn't have time to mess with this project, though I kept my eye out for somebody who might be able to play Marilyn. I mean, I found a lot of people who could do Marilyn. They looked like her, but they were guys in drag, and they really did look a lot like her. But they couldn't sing and they couldn't act. And then I found actresses who could sing and act, but none of them reminded me of Marilyn Monroe. So I kind of gave up on it. I even asked at one point, I asked Jimmy James, who was probably the finest Marilyn Monroe impersonator that there ever was. I mean, he had the makeup down to a science, and he sang live, and he was very good. And I even asked him about doing the play, but he says, you know, Greg, I don't think the audience will buy it. He said, it's too serious, and having me play it, you know, as a man playing Marilyn, I just don't think people would take it seriously. And he has tremendous respect for Marilyn, so he sort of passed on it, and I thought, well, okay, this isn't going to happen. And then I auditioned a young girl in Minnesota who, at the time, I didn't think of her as Marilyn, but I mean, she had a certain quality about her. It just had that ability to charm you immediately when you see her.
I did the audition, and I, of course, met with, you know, Greg Thompson, the producer of the show, who I was really drawn to. He was very, very charming, had these fantastic blue eyes, but he was like nobody I have ever met in my life. He wore high-heeled boots and tight jeans and the salt and pepper hair, but I mean ginormous hair, just hair for days. But super nice guy, had a lot of flash. And he said, and forget the fact that he really just didn't like my name. I mean, I never had anybody take issue with my name before.
Sonia is just a terrible name for a star.
Isn't that the ugly duckling in Peter and the Wolf, I believe you said?
You're going to have to change your name. I'm going to change it to Sunny. And she was not too particularly happy about that. She looked at me like, you got to be kidding me. You're going to change my name?
And I didn't admit it to him at that point, but I really loved the name Sunny. I thought, well, that's so positive.
I think she just needed the job really bad, so she took the job and went by Sunny. And everybody just called her Sunny, and she looked like Sunny, and everybody just picked up and ran with it.
Except my mother, who still is determined to call me Sonia. After Follies on Broadway, I did another Greg Thompson show, and it went to Bermuda, which was great. And from there, I think I went to Reno, and I stayed with the company for, I don't know, a few, maybe 5 years, I think. I had a little break between runs, and I went to visit a girlfriend who I had met on the road. She's a dancer, and she was dancing at the Belle Epoque in Spain. And I ended up, you know, singing back up for an artist over there and doing a lot of studio work. And one of the songs called Te Necesito did extremely well, both in Europe and then also it got a gold record in Ecuador. Con toda mi alma, mi cuerpo, con lágrimas tiernas y besos, con todo lo sé que preciso, te necesito. En sueños yo grito te amo, con ansias que me causan llanto, con ganas que ya no aguanto. Te necesito.
time was significant to my work in Maryland Forever Blonde in that I got off the plane in Ecuador and I had no idea that that single had had so much success. I had a glimpse, a brief glimpse of the life Marilyn must have lived, being so isolated, and I got sequestered in my hotel room and could really never leave.
I got an offer to do a theater in Branson, Missouri. And this theater in Branson was an 800-seat theater, and there were 12 shows a week, so you had like 10,000 seats to fill. And they said, you can have this theater, but we should warn you that if you don't have a star, you're going to die, because you have to have a named star to make money in Branson, Missouri. And at that time, there was Tony Orlando and Charlie Pride and Bobby Vinton and Andy Williams and Yakov Smirnoff. And I mean, it was every star you could think of was in Branson, and they had their own theater. And so, you know, to hire a star like that, even a B star, you know, somebody who's on the downhill slide, you're still talking, you know, $20,000 to $30,000 a week to get them to come in and perform. And there was no way I was going to be able to afford that. So I said, with all kinds of confidence at the time, I said, well, you know what? We're just going to produce our own star. And then I sort of panicked and thought, well, who the hell am I going to get?
Greg Thompson called me and said, you know, I have this job in Branson, Missouri, and I need a star, but I can't afford one.
I said, we're going to make you a star. And she said, yeah, okay, fine. You know, I'll just go up and do my songs and it'll be fine. I said, but you don't understand. You have to be on 24/7. We're going to build you a wardrobe of costumes, and you're going to wear cow spots wherever you go.
So that was it. I ended up in Branson, Missouri with a cow vet and a complete cow wardrobe. I was the star of the Wild Wild West show in Branson, Missouri for 4 years. I had a horse. I had a cow vet with horns on the front that mooed when you honked the horn, and it made people smile.
But then the riverboats came to the Mississippi. All the buses that went to Branson all went to the riverboats. So I said, we need to get out of Branson.
Greg thought it would be a good career move to move me to Las Vegas to star at the Rio opposite Penn and Teller.
So she went to Vegas and she starred in Showgirls.
Now the history of these dazzling performers is celebrated in a late-night adult review in the Samba Theater at the Rio All-Suite Hotel and Casino.
Show did very, very well. HBO did a special on it, and she was doing great. And I thought, you know, she needs to have her own show. We need to do the Sunny Show. And so we built a new show that we took to Harrah's in Reno at Sammy's showroom.
It was called Sunny Blondes and Boy Toys. I had a live band. I had a line of male dancers. They would lift me and carry me and slide on their knees to my feet and look at me adoringly. It was a blast.
And she also did a little tribute to her favorite blondes in the show where she did some impressions.
You know, men are like snowstorms. You never know when they're coming, how long they're gonna last, or how many inches you're gonna get. Oh.
I said, why sure, Carl? Just seems an awful shame to fire up this big-ass grill for just one little old weenie.
Johnny's guest host is Joe Rivers.
Every woman in this room, you must think like a second wife. First of all, if you're not married yet, you marry for money, money, money. Everything you get out of him, you have it buried on you. The next bitch wants it, make her dig.
She would come out and she would do jokes for Marilyn Monroe. Great material that we gave her. Things like,
I was asked here tonight to give you a short speech on the subject of sex. It gives me great pleasure. Thank you.
I never thought of her as Marilyn, but when she put this short wig on in rehearsal to do Marilyn Monroe, I went, wow, she really does look a lot like Marilyn. And I said, you know, you got to read my play. And she said, what's it about? And I said, it's about Marilyn Monroe. And she said, yeah, well, so what? And I said, well, I think you'd be really good playing that part. And she said, are you kidding me? What woman in her right mind would want to be compared with Marilyn Monroe? She says, that's a suicide mission. I'm not doing that. There's no way. And I'm happy doing my show. So my story goes, I said, okay, then will you do it if I marry you? And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
We were in Branson, Missouri. We were dating, and he asked me at one point to marry him. Well, actually, it was on the phone, and he said, you know, I have this feeling that I'm going to ask you to marry me. And I was like, really? And he said, well, what would you say to that? I said, well, if you want to know the answer to the question, I suggest you ask it. Meanwhile, I get off the phone and I'm jumping up and down on the bed like, you know, yay, yay, yay. Yes, me, yes, me. So a year goes by and I do not hear one word about marriage. 1 year goes by. We're in Reno and we are on a walk. I'm on break from Branson and we go into this jewelry store and he goes, Jeremy, why don't you bring that thing out? Why don't you bring that out? And I'm thinking, gosh, he knows the jeweler's name. What's this about? So out comes Jeremy with this ring. Well, it's a 39 karat estate ring with a pink stone and diamonds all the way around it. It's absolutely beautiful, very feminine. He goes, now, if I asked you to marry me, would you like something more traditional or would you like something like this? And I looked at it and I said, well, it was 39 carats. And I said, well, you know, I think it should be bigger. Swear to God, another year went by. He did not say boo about marriage. The next Christmas, he's opening another Christmas show, and we have our Christmas, and I opened my Christmas present, and it's a little Fabergé egg. And he said, well, open it. So I opened it, and it was the ring from the jewelry store from a year ago. And I said, oh, this is beautiful. Wow. And I look at him, and he goes, so what do you say? Well, I had this dream of him getting down on one knee, maybe asking for my hand in marriage, you know, the traditional thing that girls dream of, or I was dreaming of. But, you know, I was sure I wasn't going to hear about it for another year. So I just said yes. And we got married. He moved me to Seattle, and he said, you got to do this play. You got to read my play. You got to read my play.
I want to do my play about Marilyn Monroe.
He just nagged and nagged and nagged at me. I said, I'm not doing that play because no woman should ever do that to themselves. I mean, really, they should not have to be compared to Marilyn Monroe. It's not fair. That kind of scrutiny is brutal.
So I said, well, just read me a few lines after you've looked at it.
Finally, I just gave up and just read him a scene, just one scene. And I read the scene, first scene. He said, it's brilliant. I'm looking for a director tomorrow. And in true Greg Thompson style, he was off and running. When we started looking for a director, Greg had, a myriad of directors that that he interviewed first, and he kind of whittled it down to 2. And there was a gentleman, I couldn't even tell you his name anymore. I'm so sorry for whoever he is. And then Stephanie, she was the artistic director of the Seattle Shakespeare Company at that time. My little exposure to Shakespeare tells me that, from college, tells me that, a Shakespearean director is not going to shy away from the sexuality of life or the grit of life or even the glamour of life. And so I liked that part of it for Marilyn, because you don't want to sanitize Marilyn. But beyond that, I sat down and instantly, of course, liked her. Her first question to me was, why would you want to do this? And I said, my goal would be to do her justice. And I'm not sure I can, but if I can, that's what I want to do. She goes, okay, I'll do it.
Greg works very quickly, and Greg is result-oriented, and he's very visual, and he can see things by himself, and then he puts it into play. But this was a different process. It was a process that was different from something he had experienced before, and it warranted time. It demanded time. And that is not the normal way Greg works, although he gave us a year. So to save him from frustration.
Very well put. Very well put.
We didn't let him in the room.
They locked themselves up in our rehearsal room. They didn't let me in for a year. They didn't let me see anything.
Let's take it from, sometimes I'd feel a little guilty about making such a scene, but the rent was due and I needed a job, and the needed a job is what's going to propel you to walk, pound the pavement, okay?
Okay. Sometimes I felt a little guilty, but the rent was due. I needed a job.
Okay, good. One more time, and you're dropping about making such a scene.
Let's do a look, step, reach, grab. Look one direction, find the job, walk towards it.
Okay.
And then quickly turn around and walk the other direction, and then you can lose your heel, because we have to establish the walk.
Okay, okay.
Sometimes I felt a little guilty about making such a scene, but the rent was due. I needed a job. Then one day, I let the rubber tip off my high-heeled shoe. As I walked down the street, I couldn't help but swing my hips with a 1/4 of an inch of heel missing. From that day on, I made sure that all my shoes had one heel shorter than the other. I don't know who invented high heels, but all women owe him a lot.
And I just basically was really honored to work with her, and knew that the day I walked into rehearsal, that whatever she said, I would do my level best just to let it all go and not let anything back, just try anything and do anything. So I wasn't ready for the fact that we would not only, I'm gonna get emotional. But that I would fall in love with her so much as we fell in love with Marilyn.
What tied us with the process and the idea of doing Marilyn Monroe together was the fact that we shared a deep respect and empathy for this woman who we both felt, and we came to this independently. We independently were walking into this together, sort of at the same starting point. We admired her work. We saw from looking at her films what a wonderful actress she was. We hate how, what happened in her life. We had such respect for her and wanted to tell her story in a way that would garner respect for her. And we loved her. We loved Marilyn. We both loved her independently.
Stephanie was the director of the Seattle Shakespeare Company. I couldn't imagine her being the director of this, but Shakespeare deals with a lot of sexuality, and she was real comfortable with sexuality.
I wish it weren't in the play, but since we have to do it, okay. Here's the good news. We've set up what a healthy relationship you have with sex. All right? We've set up that there's no sense of victimhood. Okay. Let's start with with he seemed to have this thing about breasts. Let me just hear it.
He seemed to have this thing about breasts.
Yeah, because they're just breasts, right? How interesting. Good, that was good. Keep going.
After dinner, he would tell me to take off my clothes, and he'd tell me Hollywood stories.
So is that a bargain? If you take off your clothes,
I'll tell you Hollywood stories.
Great. So is there anything malicious in it?
Nope.
Is there anything maligning? Great, then it's just a nice trade.
Okay.
We're gonna keep this so innocent.
Okay.
Because the words will do enough.
He seemed to have this thing about breasts. After dinner, he would tell me to take off my clothes, and he would tell me Hollywood stories. Oh, I just listened to those wonderful stories about John Barrymore, Charlie Chaplin, Valentino, everyone. And Mr. Skank would play with my breasts. Well, he didn't want to do much else since he was getting old.
We don't have to do much here with movement, because all a woman has to do is to get in a certain position, and it is suggestive enough. So that's what we're gonna do. Where is he? Is he in the chair?
He's in the chair.
All right, so we're going to get on our knees and not do anything else. Just trust me on this. Just assume the position.
I never want to have to do that anymore. Seemed like hours and nothing would happen. Sometimes he would just fall asleep.
You know, I've done comedy, but I've never done drama.
When Johnny died, oh, I was devastated. I was without his love to guide me. I was without his strength to fight for me. I cried for nights at a time. No one could ever replace the part of my heart that Johnny took with him. I don't think any man ever loved me so much. So I want to warn you, laddie, though I know that you're perfectly swell, my heart belongs to my daddy, 'cause my daddy, he treats me so well.
The most extraordinary thing was the development of the script, because Greg kept finding new pieces of text.
Every fella would honk his horn, and I'd wave back. I thought, gee, what happened? The world became friendly.
He kept uncovering new things that Marilyn had said or were attributed to Marilyn, and that was one of the challenges of the piece, and also one of the exciting things is that everything Marilyn said came out of her mouth at one point.
Jane Russell, she was the brunette. I was the blonde. Well, she got paid $200,000 for it, and I got my usual $500 a week, which, well, you know, to me that was considerable. She, by the way, was quite wonderful to me. The only thing was, I couldn't get a dressing room. The studio kept telling me, remember, you're no star. I finally said, well, whatever I am the blonde. This is Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
So we actually, we took the script, and one time we cut it up into quotes, because they were quotes. And it was like a big jigsaw puzzle. And we would try things, and then Greg would say, I just found this, and he'd send down something new, and we'd go, oh, where could that go? It could go here, it could go there. And we wouldn't know until we put it on its feet. So it was constantly changing and evolving. It was very exciting.
Running wild, lost control, running wild, mighty bold, feeling gay, restless too, carefree mind all the time, never blue, always going, don't know where, always showing I don't care, don't want nobody, I'm all alone. love don't care, running wild. Don't want nobody, I'm all alone. Love don't care, yes, running wild.
They said, well, we should try this out of town. I said, okay, so I booked him in Hollywood. I said, that's out of town.
I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa.
It was so courageous to open in Hollywood.
Hollywood Boulevard? Really? At the Stella Adler Theater, across from Marilyn Starr, down the street from Grauman's Chinese, where she has her hands in the cement? I mean, are you kidding me?
It was walking across the tightrope without a net. It was doing that. It was take no prisoners work.
Greg's theory was, opening the show in Hollywood, was that if we got bad reviews, we'd just go home and have a happy life. And if we got good reviews, we'd know what we had and we'd be off and running. I was fortunate enough to work with Jimmy James, who was the Marilyn impersonator in the 80s. He was on all the talk shows. He took Marilyn to art form, impersonating Marilyn. The makeup was like painting a picture. Beautiful. Just the attention to detail was amazing, gorgeous. I was so lucky because he came from New York to help me for a week. And that was the end, sort of the end of my process. So I'd done my work with Stephanie, the acting work, and now it was time to work on the image because the image was so important to Marilyn. He worked with me on all things Marilyn: makeup, mannerisms, walking, talking. I flunked walking. I mean, he was just beside himself. He tied my knees together because Marilyn was a little bit knock-kneed. And he just threw his hands up. He did look at me at one point and he said, I think you're going to pull this off. Before we went to Hollywood, we did a photo shoot with Howard Petrella. His lighting is just impeccable.
The actual shoot itself was 2 days. The day before the shoot, several truckloads, literally several truckloads of wardrobe and set design stuff pulled up in front of my studio and was unloaded. Sunny bears a striking resemblance to Marilyn Monroe just on her own, and the way she knows how to move her body and speak in her eyes. I mean, she could, you'd know she was doing a Marilyn Monroe impression if it was without hair and makeup, you'd still know. But to see her come in, go in the makeup room and come out again, it was scary. The results speak for themselves. People thought that the pictures were actually of Marilyn.
And we took it to Hollywood to the Stella Adler Theater and we did a workshop production of it. It just took off.
The days before we opened the show in Hollywood were nerve-wracking, to say the least. I mean, I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. It was like nothing I've ever felt before. I remember leaving dress rehearsal one day and walking down Hollywood Boulevard and just praying. I mean, praying to past relatives to come and help me, praying to God to help me. And I remember saying to Marilyn even, please come down and help me. Please help me now.
When I returned, I said, Joe, oh, it was so wonderful. You never heard such cheering. Yes, I have, he said. Yankee Stadium, 65,000. Don't let it go to your head. Just miss the ball once, you'll see they can boo just as loud as they can cheer. And as years go passing by, and I still can't catch his eye,
and his love runs deeper than he thought it could. Then I act like a woman, and he likes a woman to act like a woman should.
They found Sonny totally believable as Marilyn. When the fan club came and they saw this show and they came with their pencils and papers to write down notes about what she was doing wrong, and they didn't really have any problems. I mean, everything was right.
Arthur and I were planning a family. Oh, I really wanted children. I was pregnant with Arthur 3 times. And 3 times, I miscarried.
I was worse than useless to her now. A reminder of her failure to abandon her old life, even when she had at last truly loved someone.
I think it took a toll on our relationship. Arthur told me that it was considered chic for a husband and wife to have separate bedrooms. Oh, but the way I feel, I mean, a husband and wife ought to share the same bedroom. I mean, with a separate bedroom deal. If you happen to think of something that you want to say to the other person, well, then you gotta go traipsing down the hall. And you may be tired. Well, for that matter, you may forget what you started out to say. Besides, I think separate bedrooms are lonely. I think people need human warmth, even when they're asleep and unconscious. For a husband and wife to live intimately together is no easy thing at best. If it isn't exactly right in every way, practically impossible. After you get what you want, you don't want it. If I gave you the moon, you'll grow tired of it soon. You're like a baby. You want what you want when you want it. But after you are presented with what you want, you're discontented. You're always wishing and wanting for something. When you get what you want, you don't want what you get. I just wish Arthur would have said more to me. Made me feel like I was stupid. Well, if I were nothing but a dumb blonde, he wouldn't have married me. But sometimes I would be afraid, to bring things up because, maybe they'd seem stupid to him. Gee, almost scared me sometimes. And though I sat upon your knee, you'll grow tired of me. 'Cause after you get what you want, you don't want what you wanted at all.
The voice was right because she wasn't using the movie voice to tell her story. She would use the movie voice when she was doing a movie scene, and then she'd use Marilyn's voice when she was doing something as Marilyn. Everything seemed to click. We had people who were Marilyn experts saying, this felt like we were spending time with Marilyn. It just felt so real. It felt like she was here, and they really, really loved it.
Well, some people have real quirky problems they wouldn't dare have anyone else know about. One of my problems is that I'm late. One of my problems is that I'm late. I guess the studio thinks that why I'm late has something to do with some sort of arrogance or something. Well, I think it's just the opposite of arrogance. I mean, you like to be prepared when you get there. And I don't think I'm late all the time. But if I am, maybe it is because I can't go as fast as other people. Well, I think we're all rushing too much nowadays. That's why people get so nervous. You know, I'm not in this big American rush. You gotta get there. Well, what's there when you get there?
You go back to 1962, you're with the icon. It's incredible.
Literally blew me away. She is just a brilliant actress.
Exquisite and breathtaking.
It was Marilyn. It felt like I was watching Marilyn Monroe.
This really is Marilyn Monroe coming back to life.
I was under the impression I had seen a ghost.
The only thing that was a problem was that we had this poster all over Hollywood. The posters were disappearing as fast as we could put them up. And pretty soon we would be walking down the street and there'd be a poster gallery and one of our posters would be in there and they'd be selling it for $100 for the poster that we put up for free inside the different stores, but they were gone all the time. And then the fan club all came one night, there was about 100 of them or so, and they were just incensed by the fact that they had never seen this picture of Marilyn Monroe that was on our poster. And they were like, where did you get this picture? How did you find this picture? Who did this? Who shot this picture? Where was this picture taken? We've never seen this picture.
And we told them that it was me, it wasn't Marilyn. So that was the big reward, is they actually thought it was Marilyn.
And when Mr. Blackwell came up to her and grabbed her and said,
I never thought I'd see you again. And I was like, wow, whoa, really? And he said, you got it. Nobody gets her softness. Nobody gets that. And you got it.
Greg Schreiner is the president of the fan club, of the big fan club, came to see the show the first time. And he said, I've seen everything there is to see on Marilyn Monroe, and frankly, I don't like any of it. And I went, whoa, well, thanks for coming. And he saw the show, and he really liked it. He invited Sonny over to his home to try on one of Marilyn's dresses. And so you got the feeling that, maybe he liked it.
I chose the dress that she wore when she won the Golden Globe, the silver lame with the white stole. And it fit so perfectly, I was so relieved. I so regret not doing my Marilyn makeup and my hair that day. I just went as me, not realizing I'd actually get to try on a dress. I love having those pictures, but I don't look like Marilyn in them, unfortunately.
I was a little cautious about this one, but I thought I'll give it a shot because it sounded interesting. Sonny has really studied Marilyn beautifully and has captured her beautifully.
I'm Marilyn Monroe. Everyone thinks my telephone rings all the time with men calling to ask me out.
I think Sonny somehow got inside of Marilyn and found that inner spirit, the same spirit Marilyn in a sense did, because she also had to become Marilyn. She wasn't really Marilyn outside of the films. So there was a secret something there that was unlocked.
I took off to Korea with the USO to entertain the troops. Oh, it was the highlight of my life. Gee, I never realized I had an effect on people until I guessed Korea. I don't think until then. I stood out on an open stage and it was cold, but I swear I didn't feel anything but good. Square cut or pear shape, these rocks don't lose their shape. Diamonds are a girl's best friend. Oh, it was like a warm embrace. I remember teasing 10,000 U.S. Marines by saying, I don't know why you boys get so excited about sweater girls. Take away our sweaters and what have you got?
And then we took off and started playing around the country, and we could play as often as we wanted, wherever we wanted to go. She got great reviews and won awards, and we just had a great time with it. And then we went to London and toured England and played the West End and went to New Zealand. We played across Canada, played all over the US. Having been on the road for so many years, we've run into some interesting people and heard some great stories. In fact, one story happened in Hollywood right after one of our early performances. There was a fellow sitting in the audience after everybody had left, and he was just sobbing. And I went up to him and I said, are you okay? And he said, yeah. He says, it just brought back so many memories. And I said, did you know Marilyn? And he said, no, but he said, I saw her in Korea. I was there with my platoon and we watched her and she gave a performance. And after the performance, we all got together and voted to give her one of our pins for our platoon. And we don't give that out to anybody, but we thought Marilyn deserved to have one. And I was in charge of making sure she was going to get that pin. And the next day we went out and we lost a number of our guys in a firefight, and I just never got her that pin. I just never delivered it. He said, I never completed my mission. And I said, oh, I'm sorry to hear that. And he said, I just wondered if maybe I could give that pin to Sonny, and that would at least help complete my mission. And I'm like, I'm like in tears, and I'm feeling terrible. I said, well, you don't want to give up your pin. And he says, no, I have to do this. I need to complete my mission. That was where he was at. And he just said, I need to complete my mission. A few weeks later, we were back home and we received this package, and it was a 3-page letter describing everything that had happened in Korea. And it had this pin that he included to make sure that he delivered it to, if not Marilyn, to Sonny. Another thing happened on the road. A lady came up to me after the show and she said, I was wondering if Sonny would like to have this picture. And it was like a little brownie snapshot of Marilyn on stage in Korea. And it was a great picture. And I said, where'd you get this? I said, this is an original picture. And she said, my son took it when he was in Korea during the war. And he wrote on the back of it, do not lose this picture. And she said, but he never came home. And she said, I've had this picture all these years, and I just thought maybe Sonny would like to have it. It's amazing how many lives Marilyn had touched or had an influence on in just 16 years of being famous and being a movie star.
The big question that pops into my mind, and certainly we are asked is, a lot, is how long are you going to play Marilyn? And my answer is always just as long as I can play 36. So the houses have gotten bigger. The audience has gotten further away, which I think is a really good thing. The lighting has gotten better. So as long as we can pull it off, I can pull it off. I guess I will continue to play the role. It still continues to be a challenge, and I am always grateful and humbled by the experience, for sure.
She still loves doing it, and it's a very, very lonely process for her. She goes into the theater by herself. She's in her dressing room by herself. There's nobody back there, with her, her assistants back there. But she comes out on stage, she does the show. At the end of the show, she takes off all of her makeup. She really can't go out in public. I mean, she has no makeup on. She's just scrubbed clean at the end of the show. Then she goes backstage, she takes off her wig and takes off her microphone, which is under her wig, takes that off. Her hair's a mess, so she can't go out and see anybody and go out and go, oh, thank you so much, I'm glad you loved it. She can't see that. I, of course, am out in the lobby going, thank you so much. Thank you. I'll let her know. And so I hear all the great comments and hear all the nice stuff that happens, but she's in the back and she doesn't get it. Then she gets to go home alone, well, she's got me.
The biggest and most rewarding parts of this job is to have met so many people that knew Marilyn and spend time with them. And each and every person that I meet, whether it was her nurse from New York when she was at the Presbyterian Hospital, I spent time with her, and each of her stories brought something else to the play. Her makeup artist on the East Coast, a lovely woman who did her makeup for years and years, saw the play and came backstage and spent time with me. The women from, the band from Some Like It Hot, all of those people had their stories and firsthand information, things I couldn't learn from a textbook. That's not written down anywhere. I got to have time with them. And in some way, it made me touch Marilyn. It made her have a whole nother dimension that was real and brought life and breath to her. And those people, I couldn't be more grateful for their stories and their, just generosity in sharing her with me.
I've locked my heart. I'll keep my feelings there. I've stocked my heart with icy, frigid air. And I mean to care for no one. And so I'm through with love.
So it's been a great run for us, and we've really enjoyed it, and we never thought it would last this long. But in any case, I got my show produced. Took a while. It only took me 20 years to get it up and running, and now we're almost 30 years out, and almost 60 years since I first saw her, but she's still with me, so sort of special.
Bring the thing that used to be, for I must love you or no one. And so I'm through with love. And so I'm through with, baby, I'm through with love.
I remember walking down these small town streets, pretending we were in Paris, France. You turned your cap around like a French parade and asked would Madame care to dance. Remember when I tried to balance on that old church wall, holding your umbrella over my head. You stood there in the rain applauding my high wire act, back when loving you was my safety net. We were the stars of a picture show, lost in a summertime song. It never once occurred to me that someday you'd be gone. building castles out of snow white sand, laughing every time a wave knocked them down. I believed that we could always rebuild them again. What I wouldn't give to feel that way now. We were the stars of a picture show, lost in a summertime song. It never once occurred to me that someday you'd be I knew that fairy tales ended, and I know that summer moves on, but it never once occurred to me that someday you'd be gone. No, it never once occurred to me that someday be gone.
Jimmy James told me the one thing when I took Marilyn on that I didn't realize is I'd never be able to let her go. And the people around her don't allow that. They don't allow it, you know, because they want her. So it's silly. But you get so close to her, you can't help it. Can't help but be protective, and that was one thing that he said that I thought, that's not going to happen to me.